All right. Okay. Hey, y'all. It's okay. You don't want to be seen, but then you should probably not be here. Not yet? Okay. All right, y'all. So, welcome. It is February, and we are here for our SWAB meeting. I hope that you all are having a wonderful start to your week. We have here our wonderful Sanitation Committee Chair, Sandy, joining us here for today. As I mentioned before, please do have all of your questions ready because this is really mainly just a Q&A for us to really make that point of connection for us and Sandy. And Sandy, I'll give you a minute to introduce yourself for those who might be meeting or hearing of you for the first time. And yeah, so we have a couple of different things that we're going to go over tonight, and there's a couple of different charges that we want to have as a Bronx SWAB, and I kind of want to bring some of you all into it. Also wanted to take some time to be able to also find out what Sandy's charge is as well, so that we can collectively do this work and really help make our boroughs a whole lot more environmental and a whole lot more equitable, especially as it relates to sanitation and waste handling practices. So Sandy, if you don't mind, if you could just give us a little brief introduction of where you come from and all the good things that got you to this space and what you're passionate about. And yeah, just allow us to be able to meet you for, like I said, for those that might be the first time.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dor. Thanks for inviting me here. Hello, Bronx SWAB. I've been to the Brooklyn one many times. I just recently went to the Queens SWAB. You all are our third SWAB. So I'm really excited to connect with the Bronx as a community that faces a lot of challenges of being divested from and underserved. And so really exciting to connect with you all. I am the council member for the 37th district, which is North Brooklyn, but on the eastern side. So East New York, City Line, northern part of Brownsville, and the eastern part of Bushwick and Cypress Hills. And here with me is Anel Hernandez, who is our Director of Climate and Environmental Policy, as well as our Legislative and Budget Director. So Anel's kind of is really my partner in crime on all things climate and environmental justice. And now as the sanitation chair, really like helping us kind of craft our agenda for the year, but real specifically for the next 4 months. So my background, just briefly, I spent the last 12 years as a waste worker, starting a composting organization here in North Brooklyn, working with young people to create a community-led, more of a grassroots way of collecting our organic waste in the neighborhood. Our community was never served by the Curbside program, still hasn't been. Maybe like a smidge of my district has been. So we've actually never had it. So we created our own solution, and we brought young people and young people of color in to be the workforce of that. And so I've been an advocate for a long time in the fight around trying to get the commercial waste zone reform bill passed, in just advocating for more facilities for organic waste, opening up opportunities for new types of collections to happen, whether it's zero emission hauling, advocating for more public land to be used for organics processing. So I've had my hands and head in waste for a very long time. So in my new role as sanitation chair, we're really trying to advocate for resources for sanitation, to the Department of Sanitation, to really be able to expand its services, whether it be support for communities that are overburdened by litter and rodent issues, whether it be like rolling out and trying to advocate for or pushing legislation for a universal curbside program for every single community in New York City, whether it be through trying to push for more processing facilities or getting our marine transfer stations to be accessible and better utilized. Those are the range of issues that we hope to cover through our work in providing oversight in the sanitation of the Department of Sanitation. So actually, this week is the first week where we're kind of launching our what we're calling Get Sanitation Done campaign. It's a 4-month campaign between now and July 1st to really raise the profile that our city is facing a sanitation crisis, and we really need the mayor to really put the investment in not only our frontline sanitation workers, but all of the vital sanitation services that keep our streets clean, and that also help us to be on track to the zero waste goals that the city adopted quite a bit of time ago. And so we're actually having a rally this Thursday at 1:30 in Brooklyn Borough Hall. If you can make it, we'd love for you to come. I know the Bronx is really far. So we also are going to be having our first hearing, our first sanitation hearing this Friday, March 4th. It starts at 10 a.m. And we'd love for you to bring your, sign up to give testimony, to ask questions, like really bring your concerns about the broader bucket of waste and sanitation to the fore. We'll be collecting testimony on it. But more importantly, I want to come check out the Bronx. Like, I want to come see what's happening in all parts of the Bronx, whether it be at composting sites, whether it be at sites where there are major environmental justice fights, whether there are waste, anything around waste that you all want to raise the profile of, and which I can amplify. I would love to do something in the Bronx to really support, you all and what you're doing here with the Bronx SWAB. So that's just like a kind of blob of information to just throw at y'all, but we're happy to answer any questions and, hear what you all are hoping to kind of get done this year.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Sandy. So what I'll do in order to facilitate, just to make this easier, if y'all want to ask a direct question, just put the little hand function, and then I can go that way, and that'll make life a whole lot easier. But what I did want to start off with is this idea around waterfront access, because I know that that's one of the major concerns that we have here in the Bronx, is that our people can't really access a lot of the waterfront because a lot of the development that's happening. So I guess my question, and it may be a little bit broad, but how do we, like, what is really the process of getting a facility to either like transfer or convert, or let's even necessarily even shut down, right? Because these waste transfer stations are so huge and they handle a lot of our waste. But yeah, I guess my question would be how would we even begin to open up those conversations with some of these waste transfer stations?
And just to clarify, you mean to create new ones or to shut the ones down?
No. Like even converting them, right? Like I have and this is just like I have a vision of like one of them being able to convert into an organics processing facility, right? Like being able to handle commercially the organic waste, but like obviously that would be a whole different system if they are only taking like specifically organics, and that's like the conversation has to be started from somewhere. And I know that these are private facilities, but they still handle public refuse. So yeah, my question really is how to begin to facilitate those conversations. Because one of the things that we're trying to do now is set up an actual tour, and we'll get to that towards the end for those of you who may be interested, but we're trying to do a tour of the Harlem River Yard transfer station. So yeah, that's my question, is like how do we even begin to open up some of these conversations?
Yeah. And I'd love to come with you to check out that transfer station.
Oh, that's actually good. Yeah. So when we do
Yeah.
schedule, keep that in mind. When we go to do that, I will make sure we invite you to that.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the pushes right now is there are transfer stations that deal with public waste that are run by the city, and then there are some transfer stations that are privately owned. And so I'm not fully familiar with which ones the Bronx are doing in terms of the private, which one you're talking about for that have the private waste. But one of the things that is a older conversation that we want to hope to raise this year is about kind of the implementation and the oversight of the waste equity laws that were passed. And a lot of that has to do with dropping down truck traffic and opening up these marine transfer stations. One of the things that we want to push for is having any of the public ones to be open 24/7 to accept both private and public waste, so that trucks don't have to go further based on whether or not they're a DSNY truck or if they are a private carter's truck. But then also the private ones, need to be clearly monitored. We need to make sure that the issues with community, if they are polluting, if there's challenges with them, we need to, we can do hearings around this.
Let me ask you a quick question. Not to cut you off, just because of what you're saying, I don't want to miss it. How would we as a SWAB monitor them? Because that's something that we've talked about, right? How do we as community members do that?
Yeah. So there's some of the work that, like, for example, the Transform Don't Trash Coalition that started in like 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. A lot of that started around waste transfer stations, and some of them are in North Brooklyn. And so people who lived around those were organizing. It grew into a larger coalition with other advocates. And I'm not sure exactly what they were doing to monitor it. Maybe Anel might have some insights, but I can also connect you with folks who were part of that campaign, who lived right next to those facilities, and kind of like share tactics on like what they were doing. I think a lot of it was like taking photos, keeping a record of, when trucks were coming in and out, how many trucks were coming in and out, when were there times of unbelievable smell that was like going past like a certain area, because they're supposed to be releasing these chemicals in the air that cuts the scent. So it depends on the specifics of that transfer facility, but I can definitely share with you or connect you with folks who were living literally on those blocks, like facing the facilities, that and see what they were using to document this, to build their case for it.
Michael.
Thank you, Dior, for recognizing me. Sandy, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming to our meeting. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm a co-founder of South Bronx Unite. I'm also the Environmental Justice Chair for our Environmental Justice Committee on the Bronx Solid Waste Management Advisory Board. Dior was hitting it right on the head, as she normally does. Our waste transfer station we have here in the Bronx, a result of the solid waste management plan that passed about 4 to 6 years ago, when you alluded to, because we have a rail transfer station, we handle all of the Bronx waste, DSNY waste, in one facility where it was already denoted to be an environmental justice community in Asthma Alley. We handled 20% of Manhattan's waste until the Marine Transfer Station on 91st Street came online. The Harlem Rail Yard Waste Facility is managed by Waste Management. Mm-hmm. We've had to meet with them about keeping the doors closed so the putrid smell of garbage doesn't emanate throughout our community. We have a fly infestation, but most egregious is the number of diesel trucks going in and out of that facility, from not only all over the Bronx, as far as Riverdale, to the South Bronx, but we also have private carters. They're unlimited in terms of what they can bring in terms of who they license with. We've seen carters come from New Jersey, right? We're handling all of nitrous waste in that facility. We're handling all of Parks waste for the Bronx in that facility. It's just one community because we have a rail line that was put here to be an intermodal rail yard back in 1991. They leased this land so it could be just that, to reduce truck traffic around the region of New York. But now we've been to a place where they centered all of this traffic. So we are the shoulder and the bearer burdens of all this, of the diesel emissions coming from these trucks. And happens so, it sits on our peninsula and our waterfront area that we have no access to. So I think what we need as a community that's been really faced with environmental injustice for a long time, we have to feel out a better way to have more equitable access to how we deal with our trash and our waste. And it shouldn't all be in one community that's typically a Black and brown community on the lower socioeconomic status. Right? There's always, I ain't gonna say poor, but disadvantaged or overburdened. And so we need to figure out how we can better do that. I'm happy that you have experience in this field and you know this issue very well. We would love to partner and work with you on this. We're planning on doing the tour of the site. We would love for you to come and see the waste management facility. They're planning a bulkhead renovation. They're trying to get a license from DEC, a permit from State Department of Environmental Conservation to redo their bulkheads. But it's not open and notorious. They're not letting the community know exactly what their plans are. Sorry, I got a puppy. And so come here. So it's really harmful for us to not know exactly how they're building out a bulkhead that sits on our peninsula and that enables us from getting to that waterfront. Where there is an existing state plan prioritized for waterfront access, but it's right there in conjunction and parallel to the plant, to the waste facility. So we really need to partner with you in terms of how we can create better access and equitable access for how our waste is handled across the 5 boroughs. And I know the folks in Brooklyn who work towards this campaign with NYC and Uprose, and even the Point CDC right here in the Bronx. And we wanted those smaller stations to be closed in those other communities, in our communities as well. But we can't be the shoulder burdens of one facility that does it all. And wherever that exists, it needs to stop.
So I just would say, some of this stuff is going to change when the commercial waste zones gets implemented, because I see the cluster of the private carters right there. And I see like they have their yards, or they have like a bunch of different transfer facilities. So, the thing is, when the zones do happen, and we have to ensure that the zones happen on time, right? Because there's little rumors and rumblings that they want to continue to push it off a half year before they're implemented. But it's very important that the zones get implemented because that will limit, and please feel to cut me off if I'm just saying stuff you already know, but that's going to limit the number of carters per zone to 3. So instead of having 70 carting companies coming to one facility or coming to a handful of facilities, there's going to be only a certain amount of carters per place. However, that doesn't necessarily address the transfer, the processing, and where that goes, right? So it's in tandem. So I'm just saying some of this stuff in terms of trucks will be resolved, but what goes where and how much is supposed to go, I mean, that was legislated. There's supposed to be a cap for every single transfer facility.
Except for marine or rail transfer stations.
Right.
Right. So we never were going to get a reduction. We only got an increase, and will get an increase even based off the new law. Right.
So there are other facilities, there are other marine transfer station facilities that are supposed to be constructed. Right. And those are being constructed, and one of them will be in a very wealthy white part of Manhattan. Right. And so we need all your help.
What about the Bronx Marine Transfer Station? Like in the North Bronx, where we have Riverdale, where it's really an economically affluent neighborhood, they don't get the industrial sidings, they don't get the warehouses, they don't get the truck traffic. Why don't they have their own waste transfer station so they don't bring their garbage to us?
Yeah. I mean, these are all questions we need to address through waste equity. So this is on our radar. It's a very important thing. I would like to come to the Bronx. I want us to raise this profile. I want us to raise this issue. We have to push for oversight and implementation. Where all of this stuff goes is going to be a major thing. We also have to open more processing facilities. So we can't just be bringing all the types of waste to one area. That's why organics is so important. That's why we need more organics processing facilities. That's why we need Rikers to close down so we can have stuff at Rikers as well on that island. That's why we need the DSNY budget to include building new facilities so that we're not taking a third of the waste stream to, one particular part of New York City. We can distribute that more. There's more space for it. And yes, other communities need to take on their fair share of the waste infrastructure that is being generated here in the city. So it's an enormous task. It's a very political thing. We have to organize, we have to push for it, and we have to keep raising the profile of this. Because right now, if you talk to someone about marine transfer facilities in the west side of Manhattan, no one's gonna know what you're talking about. No one's gonna know what you're talking about for a marine waste transfer facility in North Bronx. So we need to make this something they have to talk about. So we're gonna have to get organized. We need to invite the Bronx delegation to this tour. We need them to walk with us. All these folks that just got elected, we need them to be a part of this and advocate. We need to do advocacy for all of the incoming members to ensure that those laws mean something. They're not just a piece of paper we passed 2-3 years ago. I know that's not the be all answer you're looking for, but the answer is we got to get organized and we got to reactivate this issue because when we're coming out of the starting to get through these weird time of the pandemic, where are we in it? Are we out of it? People are going to start clamoring for what's the thing we need to be focused on, and waste equity most certainly has to be at the top of the list. It's definitely in part of our Get Sanitation Done campaign is to put money in and to raise the profile of this.
So I'm sorry, unless you.
No, go ahead.
Thank you so much for that. So I had a question then about the solid waste management plan, because it's about to come up again. It's going to be time to, start trying to dig in. One of the things that I'm unclear about is as a community, how do we collectively, and I want you to talk a little bit more about the campaign as well, because I think that that's a really good charge for the SWAB, because a couple of things that we've been talking about is, again, getting out into the community. So I think that this is actually a really good time to kind of not only get sanitation done, but also amplify Recycle Right New York, which essentially is just this one location where everybody can kind of go to learn about recycling. So I'm wondering if, thank you for dropping the link. My question is, how do we influence the next solid waste management plan, so that, because I would like to see something in the solid waste management plan that talks about the city having to actually create these local organics processing facilities, right? To say that we have to kind of get away from this export and be more and invest more into that. How do we begin to insert that narrative, or because I think, what's the year that we have that the new solid waste management plan is supposed to be coming out?
So it's right now, it's going to be, so it has to come, they're in the process of getting the consultant, although it's what they said is the consultant that has done the previous solid waste management plan is going to do this one, but they have a consultant who's supposed to do a study first of what is the profile of New York City waste, and that's supposed to inform the new plan. So over the next basically year, we're gonna have, they're in the process of getting the bring back on the consultant who's supposed to manage that planning process, manage the project, manage building the plan. And so over the next year, I imagine year or two, is gonna be moments where it's gonna be important that we have your voices there to talk, and there's going to be tons of public hearings about it. There's going to be tons of moments where you're going to come testify at the council, and you're going to, there's going to be a lot before it gets adopted. We have time. I think it's 2026 is when it's.
I think it's 2026.
Yeah, so we have time. But right now it's just like getting like
Right,
the
but this
folks
is
who
the
are going to be managing it are getting like on board.
Okay. And that was a question because I know like this is usually, I would imagine, I know it's like 4 years away for us to have a solid new one. But I imagine that now, as you mentioned, the consultant is coming in, is the time to kind of start really assessing, like they're getting a landscape of what the issues are. But I'm hoping, especially as you spoke a lot to the waste equity, that, you know, these hearings are going to come up. So these are the opportunities that we get to keep kind of driving the same point home around how we need access to our waterfronts, but also how we need to have more equitable distribution of the waste throughout the city. So I look forward to that. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry, before we keep moving. And we're not gonna hold Sandy up too long. And if y'all gonna be shy out here without your questions, then we're gonna have to follow up and figure out how we can maybe email or get some answers later on, because I definitely don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah.
But if nobody is gonna ask questions, so my next, if you could speak a little bit more about like the Getting Sanitation Done, like tell us a little bit more about that campaign. And I think that will, I also have another question around the litter thing, but yeah, if you can answer that, then that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm just toggling through tabs real quick. So I just have a clear, just like have it in front of me. So, I mean, really Get Sanitation Done is really, you know, it's specific to the budget fight. Just kind of like, this is like a push we want to do. We want to raise the profile that our communities have been just overwhelmed and overburdened with litter and rodents and a lack of infrastructure, a lack of equitable services across the board. And the solution is not to cut back, right? During the pandemic, we have just been, you know, the 311 calls about litter and rats has just exploded. I think it was a 40% increase over just a 2-year period. And there's a lot of consequences to that. So when Ida happened, all of the drains were clogged up with junk, and then we have flash flooding. There's just all these ramifications that come, whether it's a public health issue, a public safety issue, or an environmental justice issue. That the solution to getting out of the pandemic and to recovering is to not only put more resources to our frontline sanitation workers and its operations, but also to make those unprecedented investments in meeting the zero waste goals. Like, we have to think about not only the short-term immediate work that has to be done to get us to some level of decency, then also moving towards the long-term solutions, which take a lot of time. So addressing waste infrastructure, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars needing to be invested in large-scale public works projects to be able to get new facilities, whether it be organics waste processing facilities, whether it be marine transfer stations and barges that could carry, all that stuff is mad expensive. And it takes a long time to locate where they're gonna be, site them, contract them, like all of that. It takes a really long time. And if we don't put the momentum and put the pressure on the city to stay on course, by the time we decide that it's like, oh, we have breathing room to do it, it's gonna be too late. So we have to really hold the city to its own goals that it adopted. We have to hold the agency to its own work it's supposed to be doing by making sure, number one, it has that resource, and that we're not just focused on certain specific areas like basket service. Yes, the baskets are overflowing. Yes, it's a problem, but there are longer, more deeper, more chronic issues, such as like the waste infrastructure being located in 2 specific areas that are predominantly working class communities of color, right? That's a major challenge that cannot just be pushed to the side because we're going to put more people on basket service, right? We have to think of the long term and the short term at once. And that's what that campaign is. The mayor says he is a get stuff done mayor, so we're asking him to get sanitation done. You know, and so that's really what this is about. It's meant to be a broader a campaign that will uplift things like waste at NYCHA, the rat mitigation needs, the waste equity needs around the transfer stations, how is recycling going? All of the things that are happening under the broader bucket of waste. Can we compost on public land? Do we have enough facilities to do it? Why is it inefficient? Where is the transparency on the data? All of these things, we want to create moments through what we can do, which is our hearings, oversight moments through our monthly public hearing, and the two opportunities we have to bring the public to raise concerns and questions and make demands on the city's budget, the city sanitation budget. But then also we want to use these 4 months and the pressure that's going to be building under these 4 months and the negotiating that comes down to the city budget to talk about other things. So that's why I say invite me to the Bronx, so we can bring, you know, the cameras or whatever, or get some articles out and raise the level and bring the members who are representing the Bronx together with us to look at these issues and make sure that they fully understand the details of it. And so, you know, that's why we're coming to visit the different SWABs, because we understand that you all have a level of knowledge around these issues that is not something everybody is really excited to spend their Monday evenings on. And so it's our job to like push this to the fore and make this something that everybody's talking about, because people are already talking about litter and rodents, and it's just like everyone's talking about the trash in the city. So let's connect that to the broader goals of the zero waste plan. Let's connect that to the broader issues about which communities get the highest quality of service and which don't. We have to, you know, make the point about the rats are going into the trash bags because we don't have organic separation in a proper way that's fully serviced. So this is an opportunity for us to raise our concerns, raise our issues that we spend our time on, that sometimes are just in the weeds and people are just like, it's too far. It's like one step too far. And that's why we have been focusing on the litter and rats, because that's something that everybody's already talking about, and like to try to tie those to the bigger issues around equity and around what we need to invest in now for the long haul. So we hope that over these next few months, we could partner and do some stuff together to really raise awareness and raise the issue and build up the pressure.
I appreciate that. My question is around the electric trucks, because like that's another thing, right? Around this idea of raising the awareness and raising, you know, these issues. One of the things that I think I find to be quite frustrating, obviously, we all know that like one of the things I think is like important not to do is like the poverty Olympics. Like, well, no, we should get, and no, we're like, okay, we're all suffering to an extent. And the goal is to alleviate that suffering for all of us. So I want to preface it before I make this comment. How do we, because I was aware that they were like testing out the electric fleet vehicles in an environmental justice neighborhood in Brooklyn. And I was like, great, right? But how do we get, because I feel like the Bronx is always last. We're looked at last, like we're a whole lot poorer than Brooklyn, right? Like this is just the reality of kind of like what we're looking at with the demographic. And so because we're always like the last to be thought about, we're kind of like having to deal with a lot of things that, you know, kind of come down the pipeline. So my question around, and I know that this is part of like what can justify not cutting the budget, especially for these types of investments moving forward. But what is the state of this electric fleet for these diesel vehicles? And I know that the commercial waste zone has some things in there around how some of these vehicles, I believe, need to be retrofitted so that they're a little bit more sustainable driving through the city. But I'm curious, where is sanitation at with these electric fleets of trucks, and how has the project been going in Brooklyn?
Yeah, so my understanding, when Anel and I sat with the commissioner and some of their senior leadership team, we did ask about electrifying the fleet. It's not something that's going to be expanded in the budget, although our mayor did say it is, having diesel trucks run around collecting organics was really contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. We were like, yes, that's great, acknowledged. Yes, we agree. So how do we get away from that? So we did ask about the electric fleet. I do not know how many electric trucks. There is, my understanding is they did invest in some a while back, but it's not something that they're expanding at this moment because they're very significant cost. So that is something that we can, these are questions we need to ask around the budget. These are things we should fight for around the budget. I can definitely tell you that one of the things we brought up more than once on several occasions was that we would like to see more money when there is piloting, when there is experimentation being considered for containerized waste or smart bins or electric fleets. Those are things that should be happening in the outer boroughs. They always happen in Manhattan. They always happen in, Windsor Terrace or whatever. They never happen in the outer boroughs. And so that is something that we brought up more than once, give us some pilot, we'll pilot the container waste here because we never even got the freaking curbside bin. So give us something to play with and work out. Why is Astoria getting the compost smart bin? Other communities could benefit from this. The work that my organization that I started a long time ago, our neighborhood is prime now for these types of initiatives, and they're not taking advantage of where have people had to pull their own resources or their own community operations together. You should be, working with these groups and incorporating these studies and pilots in them. So this is something that we're in agreement on in terms of why are the outer boroughs, outer neighborhoods the last to get these types of things, and then when the money runs out, we don't even get a chance to try them out. So these are things we want to raise through this campaign, not just for these 4 years. This is a through line all the way.
So then my question is, how do we get sanitation to work more with community groups? And I know we're already having these conversations. It's fine. I get it. There's a composting stakeholder session coming up. What gets really difficult, I think, sometimes and frustrating is just kind of dealing with the bureaucracy of it. And Lilibeth, I know you asked a question. I'm going to try to formulate it after this. So I did not see you, just so that you know. But how do we, because I think part of the argument is that, and this is what my awareness is that sanitation just doesn't have the language, right, to really connect with, I think, folks within the outer boroughs, because there's a disconnect, right? There's a disconnect with just political organizing in general. And I think, somewhat a level of distrust that I think that people have with just government organizing institutions in general. So I think that sometimes there are local organizations that may have more of a pulse, right? And be able to communicate to folks more, get a message to a whole lot more. However, there doesn't seem to be funding for that, right? It doesn't feel like sanitation wants to put the dollars behind it. They want everybody to do the work, right? To help us change these behaviors, but they don't want to put the funding behind these kinds of pilots within the outer boroughs to allow these organizations to be able to talk directly with people. So I'm wondering, is there, in your experience, or just in what it is that you're bringing now, this kind of new energy being breathed in, into the sanitation committee, is there a way that you imagine that we could actually advocate for that type of budgeting, whether it's from our borough president, for certain ways, what is the stream, what is the ask? Because I'll be honest with you, there was the borough president, after the, budget, preliminary budget went out, kind of had a call, literally the very next day, hey, come share your concerns. What do you want? And I was I don't even know what to ask for and how to ask for, what's that dollar amount for what, for who, right? To do what? But I'm curious about, what would it look like to get sanitation funding for the outer boroughs, not only for the piloting, but also for the outreach education?
Yeah. So, I just want to be frank with you that the cuts that we're experiencing in the preliminary budget now are on top of last year's cuts.
Yeah.
So, on the keeping it real version, my focus is to fight to get as much back. Okay. And that's not even that's not even talking about the previous year, right? Like we're just trying to get back to a level. So there's a couple of different options. You know, one, I don't know which of your members across the Bronx are doing participatory budgeting. That is something, pulling together proposals, saying we want project X over here, and doing the outreach to get your community to vote for that project, because that, you know, those projects are projects that are meant to be managed and integrated into public agencies. So that would be a great opportunity if you have some participatory budgeting there. I think the borough president should also be working with you all. You know, you should be advocating to them for bigger capital projects. You should be working with your state senators and the US senator, because the federal infrastructure money coming out, those are opportunities. What are the shovel-ready projects? What are the projects that have been kicking around for a while that just never got any capital, never got any resources? Which organization in your borough is best prepared and accountable enough to receive those types of levels of resources and move them through their administration into the ground, to move some of that stuff? I mean, those are all options. They're not perfect, but they're opportunities to try different things out. The other thing is, State Senator Brad Hoylman has an organics bill that, you know, that he introduced. If that happens, one of the things they mentioned is that the city could then tap into some state grant money that is currently not available, that could go to education and awareness. But to be clear, the Department of Sanitation has spent millions and millions of dollars on education awareness. Where that stuff has been targeted to is a question for transparency. Is it enough? No, we know that. But right now, we're talking about restoring funding for operations, like really just getting operational funding back. But I think we need to go harder. Like, we want that to be restored and expanded. We would like to see hardcore education and resources, education and awareness campaigns happening aggressively, like organizers, people on the ground. You know, can we get community boards? Can we get block associations to have people come and train the block? I don't know. What can we imagine? What can we get organized for? These are all things that we need to demand. And I understand, as someone who was running a grassroots operation for many, many years, just how incomprehensible these systems are, and not knowing that different pockets of things exist that you could tap into. And then even once you know they're there, you don't actually even have the capacity or understanding to achieve them. So I understand your frustration. I don't have all the answers, but I do have the desire and willingness to work with you all and to work with the groups that you all work with, who want to take on things, who want these projects, who want to build this infrastructure. I want to work with you to try as hard as possible and push as hard as possible to get those resources.
Awesome. So we have a question in the chat. Lilibeth, I don't know if your question is like a question or more of like just a
I'll talk to you about it.
Would you like to?
I think it's a transparency point. We can look at, we went through the budget for last year, so we can look at how much was dedicated to that, and I can reshare that. I don't have it on my head now. We have a slide deck that they gave us that had a breakdown, but we can look at it. But it's a transparency point, and not everyone knows how much has gone to that.
Okay, I think I know how to formulate this question. Okay, I think what Lilibeth is asking is if you can speak to exactly what the cuts mean for, is it only curbside composting or community composting, Lilibeth, that you're speaking to? Because I think what Lilibeth is asking about is now how will these services be affected now that these new cuts are coming down the line? What does that mean for community composting, and what does that mean for curbside collection? I believe that was the question.
So my understanding is it means it will not be expanded. So the same, 7 community boards that currently have curbside will continue to have curbside. All of the areas that don't have it, they are tracking demand or interest. So you can still organize people to sign up. You can still, express your interest in a DSNY form, and that they're collecting that. And there's a map that has zones of like where you live, ones that are being serviced and ones where you can express your desire for it. So that's what that means. In terms of community, I believe that I'm not fully clear on for example, the food scrap drop-off program. I know that like through the partnership with Grow NYC and DSNY, there will probably be, I think it will stay. I'm not guaranteed for sure because we haven't gotten that far. Like we've spent Anel spent a whole day with budget people just trying to dissect, and we only got this last week. So we still have to go through all of it, and we've been going through as much as we can, line by line. But I'm not sure. I just know that the food scrap drop-off will not be expanding, so you won't see more sites. The cuts last year that happened, they were able to, through the coalition, Save Our Compost Coalition, they were able to get more money restored to community composting through some of the DSNY funded organizations like Earth Matter, Big Reuse, some of these bigger places that support gardens and collect, work with volunteer operations to do pickup. But my understanding is it's no expansion. It's 54 million, I believe, no, 18 million.
Yeah, no, wasn't that
18 million that's being pulled. So there will not be, just think about it as status quo. And I'm not sure exactly what further operations will be impacted in the organics as of this moment.
And then to Jasmine's, and we're gonna start to wrap up and wind down. I'm glad. Thank you so much, Sandy, just for taking the time to answer these questions, and thank y'all for asking them. So Jasmine asked about what are your outreach plans to educate residents not aware of the importance of DSNY's brown bin program or the difference between the many methods to get rid of their organics. So I imagine that you're asking what Sandy's outreach plans directly for that. Maybe asking what sanitation's outreach plan, but maybe.
No. Sanitation is not on the phone right now. So yeah, I'm just wondering, like, what are you looking to push, the new mayor to do for when it comes to trying to disseminate this to whoever is doing organic, which is mostly Disney. But when it comes to a large corporation, just what they should do in order to actually get the engagement to justify the amount of money that they're getting for this. I mean, it could be going to many different methods. There's a lot of different people that have different outlooks on how even DSNY couldn't handle all this. So that's just my question.
No, I hear what you're saying. Sorry. Losing my voice. I've been at rallies all day. So just a couple parts there. One, anything that's in the private sector, so any commercial waste, we do have a commercial organics recycling law, which is just saying commercial composting law, that it has been in effect, and it goes by type of operation, size and scale of operation. And it started really big, like stadiums, big convention centers, and it's slowly getting down to the storefront level, to the small business level. So at some point, all private waste will have to be separated, recycling, organics, landfill. So that's the private sector. In the public sector, we hope to introduce legislation for a universal curbside program, along with, there was a piece of legislation last year it was introduced by Councilmember now Borough President Antonio Reynoso and Keith Powers, Councilmember now. Those are both now his pieces of legislation. It was called the CORE Act, which would create three facilities per community board for organics and e-waste recycling. I don't know if he plans to reintroduce that. It didn't pass last year. It was created as an emergency stopgap when the cuts to the organics program happened. They tried to put forth this piece of legislation as creating some designated land within each community board to allow for some sizable operation for organics to happen. That potentially could be reintroduced, because there's certainly with organics, there's multiple different options, like whether it's curbside, you need solutions for high-rise buildings, for people who want to bring their stuff somewhere. I mean, we need to have multiple different options. And now they've rolled out this smart bin, compost smart bin. So I don't know, we'll have to do a hearing, an oversight hearing, as that starts to roll out on how those bins have been working, and whether or not we can get more of those in different communities. But I don't know if I'm fully answering your question, but all that to say is that the private sector waste should and will be taken care of through both the commercial waste zone reform and the commercial organics recycling legislation. But the public spaces where we really need to focus attention. The last thing I will say to you all is that there is a narrative, and we all know it, that only certain communities want to do this. And that is something that is coming forward. You can see through the mayor's own language that low participation rates, people don't really want to do it. And we have to show that the outer boroughs want this. We have to show that Black and brown communities want this, and they're eager and excited to participate. So like, I'm really going to be counting on you all and working with you all to really make that case that it's not just white people in certain community boards that want this, that New Yorkers all need to have access to this. It needs to be a universal thing, same quality of infrastructure and services for every block needs to be the name of the game. And so I'm going to be really looking to y'all for help on that, because I can be like, yeah, I want the compost. And he's like, whatever. She's like the crazy compost lady. But I have to show I'm not alone in this, that we have to show that there's a lot more people who demand this, who want our zero waste future. And that's what I really need your help on. And so if we can find opportunities to collaborate and partner on either creative comms, actions, rallies, site visits, whatever it is, like I'm willing, able and eager. I would love to raise the profile of people of color who want these services and this infrastructure in their communities, and who see it as so vital to our future in this city. So please reach out.
Lastly, Jessica, did you wanna say something?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I worked in composting outreach for NYC Compost Project here in the Bronx. And so like I've seen folks be really receptive to something like the brown bin program, or taking food scraps to a site for them to be composted. They were really receptive for it whenever they were gardeners or people that grow food, and they recognize that compost is gonna only help them. So I'm just wondering, like, any chance Parks Department and Department of Sanitation could sort of work together on some of these campaigns to like make it more of like a multifaceted approach, that it's like waste and compost and growing food and plants are not separate, they're connected. And I think that's something I always thought about too, just like I heard here something about composting in parks, and just thinking about how like that can happen, given like I know these two agencies sort of work in silos. So just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, the nice thing is we have a parks chair who is very excited about this issue, Shaker Krishnan. We've already talked about potentially collaborating on either legislation or something, although there has been previous things previous resolutions, and I think they're just resolutions to have composting on parks lands, but we have talked about having a hearing on it. So that would be something, ideally that gets introduced through legislation. Like we have a hearing based on like us introducing something that allows parks to kind of get in that mindset and put and allow right-sized operations in certain types of whatever the, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of criteria, but to get right-sized operations in parks. And hopefully it will help us make the connection around, for example, like the site under the Queensbridge Park, that's a parks land that they want to make it to a parking lot. And I'm like, who cares about a parking lot? Like this is a great site to achieve our goals. So making those connections is so important, and getting parks to understand that as a holder of so much so much land in the city, it really could lend its asset to serving the broader goals, especially while we're waiting for the administration to really prioritize organics and make this a thing.
And then, I'm sorry, Jessica.
No, I was just saying thank you. That was a great answer.
And then I do have to go because Anel and I actually have a whole nother hour of work on this campaign to get ready for Thursday.
Thank you so much. Can I just ask you one last question? Just because it's a budget related question that Diana had put in the chat that I think is like very important. She mentioned that it sounds like sanitation districts all get equal funding, which sounds like equity, but actually wealthier neighborhoods like Midtown Manhattan actually need less funding because there's so many private sanitation services in large buildings. Is this accurate, and can the city council do something about reallocating funds?
Yeah, so one of the things that the comptroller, Brad Lander, wants to really talk about is like, what is the metrics that define, how does the city determine how each district requires, how much money each district requires from sanitation, in terms of like, if all of them need equal amounts, or if some need more because the burden of the type of service is different. So some might need more street sweepers, or more like folks on foot taking care of areas, where others might need more support for illegal dumping, where others just need like more basket service. And so one of the things that we don't have is we can assess like, okay, this is how much you budgeted for, and this is how much you spent, and this is like the programs you spent it on, but we don't necessarily have a citywide set of data that or metrics that helps us determine how we make those decisions about how allocating resources, and then how do we define success. So that is something we'll be working with his office on, and we're really, it seems so basic that it's like unbelievable that we don't have it. This is like, I don't understand. I was like, why are you bringing this up? And then I was like, he's saying we don't have these things. So it's just one of those moments where we need to really dig in and lay the groundwork for how reporting happens, and how our data is telling us a real story that helps us direct resources where they need to go.
Excellent. Thank y'all so much. I know you gotta go. It's fine. Feel free to hop off. Thank y'all so much for being present, for your questions, for your energy. As I mentioned, the next charge for us is getting this nice tour of the waste transfer station that handles so much of our borough's waste as well. So I will keep you all posted with that. Sandy, I'll stay in contact, and now I'll let you all know where we are with the organizing with that, and checking with you with your calendars. The rally that's coming up on Thursday, I'll make sure we get it out to our networks. I will do my best to be there. Worst case scenario, might have to pull my daughter out of school early and bring her to the rally, but like, hey, what are we doing if the kids are not at the rally? So anyway, y'all have a wonderful, wonderful rest.
Please sign up to give testimony, submit testimony for the hearing.
On Friday, yes. I will send out all of those information. It will probably go out most likely first thing tomorrow, but you all will have it in your email, so you'll have access to everything. And have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you so much for coming.
Remember to breathe, y'all.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay.